very special guest joining us live and exclusive on ET Now, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, former finance minister, in fact, one of India's most successful finance ministers, joining in live here on ET Now. Mr. Sinha, thank you so much for joining us here on ET Now. You know, we were hearing a host of CEOs and market experts, and you know, over the years, one doesn't expect both these constituencies to ever criticize a budget on the budget day for sure. So I'm hoping you'll be frank as always, because you're someone who's known to speak his mind. So thanks again for joining us here on ET Now. You know, we heard the former finance minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram, and again, I don't expect him to praise the budget, but to quote him, he says this seems like more like an accounts exercise, nothing transformational in the budget, and definitely not a bold budget. These are the words of Mr. P. Chidambaram. Would you agree with that view, or do you think this budget has enough in terms of its elements to kickstart the growth cycle?
I would totally and absolutely disagree with what Mr. Chidambaram has said. And I'd like to point out that when we had faced a very difficult situation when Vajpayee ji was Prime Minister and I was the Finance Minister, there was a certain model of economic development that we had adopted, and that model was to increase the demand for investment goods in the economy by emphasizing infrastructure and other sectors, housing for instance, and let consumer demand follow. The UPA government completely changed this whole model, and they depended more on consumer demand to propel the economy, and we are aware of the consequences: inflation, interest rate hike, and consequent decline in investment and decline in growth rates. So this government in this budget has gone back to the Vajpayee model, according to me, and a lot of emphasis has been put on infrastructure. Before the budget, I had identified 3 areas for the attention of the finance minister. This was the road sector, this was the railways, and this was the housing sector. Now all 3 sectors have received the finance minister's attention, not only in terms of outlays, but also in terms of concessions on in taxes. And if this takes off, then we will end up by increasing the demand for investment goods, and investment goods demand increase will automatically mean that some of the most stressed sectors of the economy currently, as a result of the UPA policies like cement, steel, building material, even the power sector, will receive a fillip. So I don't know on what basis Mr. Chidambaram is talking about this has no big ideas. They are going back to disinvestment and strategic sales, something which we had done when we were in power the last time, and the UPA government had reversed. So the UPA did a lot of damage to the economy,
which
and you know, as FM has said, he has spent 2 years trying to undo the damage, and now he is trying to take off.
Sure. One would argue that they haven't completely gone back to the way the NDA-1 was working, especially in terms of privatization of assets. I'll come to that in a bit, but I want to first get the elephant in the room out of the way, which is on the fiscal deficit. How do you read what they have done? Because one gets the feeling that they're trying to appease both camps here. One camp was in favor of relaxing targets, one camp was in favor of adhering to the target. So on one hand, they're saying we're not going to tinker with the target for next fiscal, so we'll keep it at 3.5%. But they're also saying we're going to set up another committee to review the FRBM Act in the first place and see if there is a need for a more medium-term, relaxation of targets. So they've tried to appease both camps, and in this sense, one may get a feeling that they haven't really taken a position on the fiscal deficit.
No, you can't. He need not have taken a position, especially when he was saying that he would appoint a committee to look at a new FRBM Act. And, you know, I had told your channel before the budget that I would not have minded if he had taken some liberty with fiscal deficit while following the roadmap on a revenue deficit. But he is preferred to be cautious. Maybe he consulted RBI, maybe he was looking at the yields of the government bonds, and he has taken a balanced view. I don't see any reason why one should quarrel with that, and this is a healthy view to take.
Right. The market now believes that the government has done its bit, and the owners now shifts to the central bank to cut rates in a more rapid sort of a manner, because inflation is pretty much under control. Do you believe now is the time for some aggressive monetary action? Do you think that the central bank now needs to cut rates rapidly, maybe sooner than originally anticipated, maybe ahead of the turn, before the policy itself? Do you expect central bank action now?
There is a very strong case for the governor of the RBI to cut rates, and not cut rates merely by a measly 25 basis points, but he should be more adventurous and cut it by at least 50 basis points, at the same time making sure that the banks pass on the rate cut to the consumers, to their clients. And you know, he doesn't really have to wait for the next policy statement on monetary policy. He could go ahead and do it as soon as possible. This will be an additional fillip to the growth impulses in the economy.
Sure. You know, Mr. Sinha, you were referring to that interview that you gave ET Now ahead of the budget, and it was a very extensive interview where you spoke on a whole host of issues. And one issue that you did speak on was on the NPA mess, and we did speak about bank recapitalization there as well. 25,000 crores was all that the government is earmarked for now as far as bank recap is concerned. A section of the market is disappointed because they thought that the government will put in more money. Of course, there's a contrary argument which says you can't keep putting in more, good money to chase bad money. But what is your view on the bank recap plan that the finance minister has outlined today in the budget?
I would agree with the commentators who are saying that 25,000 crore rupees is very, very inadequate, considering that the government is required to put in something like 2 lakh crore to meet the recapitalization needs of the banks over the next couple of years. So 70,000 crore perhaps would have been nearer the mark. But he has talked about he's talked about bringing down the equity of the government in the IDBI to less than 50%. I wish he had said it generally for all PSU banks. In my interview to your channel, I had suggested that they should go back to my bill, which was held up by the Congress party, to reduce government shareholding, if necessary, to about 33% in PSU banks, while retaining some of the powers that we have, and tell the banks to go to the market and raise resources. At the same time, I had also suggested that we need not strictly follow the Basel III norms. We could take some liberty there, and recapitalization could proceed as and when the banks could go to the market.
Let's talk about some of the revenue assumptions, Mr. Sinha, for the government to be able to meet its fiscal deficit target. It expects well over 95,000, in fact almost 99,000 crore rupees from spectrum auctions, so from communication services. Many would argue that that's being extremely optimistic at a time, and you understand the telecom sector very well as well. You pioneered reforms in the telecom sector when the NDA government was in power, so you understand the sector as well. Do you think that the government is being extremely ambitious in expecting almost 1 lakh crore rupees from spectrum auction? Is that going to throw up?
Well, according to the present estimates and the prices at which spectrum will be offered, this is not an unlikely figure. I mean, it's not like, you said that we'll have so much from this investment, end up getting a pittance. I think on a spectrum, we should be able to get 90,000 crore.
What about divestment? Because the government has got it horribly wrong last year, set a very ambitious target, got nowhere close to it. How should the government go about divestment? Again, they've not set such an aggressive target, but even this seems reasonably aggressive. How should the government go about a divestment? And why do you see there's this paranoia over privatization? Why is this, which wasn't there in the previous NDA government, and the market thought this government will pick up from where the previous government had left? Why is this paranoia that we're seeing in the current establishment over privatization as far as stake sale is concerned?
I really don't know. I mean, I wish the finance minister had used the word privatization in his budget speech, and not merely confined himself to strategic sales. I mean, it's like rediscovering the wheel. We had already discovered the wheel through a strategic sales, and it is a proven fact that in a volatile market, you get the best price for your shares through a strategic sales and not by going and selling it in small lots in the market, because it's impossible to time the market, and especially given the global environment and the impact of that on our markets, very difficult to say that we'll be able to get a good price for our shares if we continued with the practice of going to the market with small lots of shares. So now they are saying that Niti Aayog will act like the disinvestment commission of our days, and they will go for a strategic sales, and I hope that they'll stay the course, and the strategic sales clearly means transfer of management, and that means privatization. So they are proceeding in that direction. I hope they'll continue to show the courage to do that.
Mr. Sinha, on the corporate side, one would have expected a more drastic cut in corporate tax rate, especially given the fact that the finance minister announced a roadmap of bringing down corporate tax rate over a 4-year time frame. We haven't seen him move on that front at all, because he's being cautious because he needs revenue, so we can't drastically bring down that rate. Do you think he's leaving too much for himself to do over the next couple of years as far as bringing down corporate tax rates are concerned? Will he have that much of elbow room next year, you feel?
Last year when he talked about reducing corporate tax from 30% to 25% and removing the exemptions, I had expressed my doubts, and I had said that each exemption is serving an economic purpose, and it will be very difficult for any finance minister to completely do away with exemptions. And therefore, if I don't know whether he has done this exercise, but if the finance minister has looked at exemptions, then clearly he has been held back, and therefore he has been, there is no doubt about it, he has been somewhat timid, because if he wants to reduce corporate tax from 25 to from 30 to 25, then he should have clearly laid the roadmap in this budget. He'll have to do more than 1% in all the 3 budgets, and clearly this he has not been able to do. So this is a difficult exercise, and I don't know, I'm still very doubtful about the success of this exercise.
Just 2 last questions, Mr. Sinha. One is on the big political challenge right now, which is creating jobs. This government came to power on the promise of growth and creating jobs, because 10 years of UPA we saw growth, but it was jobless growth. And we've seen very little progress on that front in the 19 months that we've seen this government in power, for a host of reasons. Global factors are also one of them. Is there enough in this budget, do you think, for a massive job push, which is what is needed in this economy? Because if you look at sectors that will create employment, auto, for example, has taken a knock on account of the increased tax that has been imposed on them. So I'm wondering, where is the job push going to come from other than infrastructure?
The job push will come from infrastructure, which will become a major creator of jobs, as happened in our time. Housing will be a major creator of jobs if housing takes off, and there is no reason why housing should not take off after this budget. And telecom, if there is expansion in telecom, that will be a job creator. I wish he had laid some emphasis on the entertainment sector, which is a major job creator. When the general economy picks up, then jobs are created in every sector. Additional job opportunities arise in every sector of the economy. That was our experience during the Vajpayee regime, and I am quite sure that if the economy starts to grow at over 8%, and then the startups and the IT sector and everything else put together will create the necessary job opportunities. Railways could emerge as another major employer.
So to sum it all up, would you say it's a good budget, but not necessarily a transformational one? Is that a fair assessment of this budget? Not being too critical, and yet saying that it could have done a lot more.
the budget could have done a lot of damage. And I think we should all be grateful that this budget does not damage any sector of the economy. On the other hand, it has given a great deal of impetus to the growth impulses. It has focused on sectors which will provide the growth in the economy and employment. So all in all, I would say that it is a growth-oriented and job-oriented budget.
Right. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, before I let you go, if your son Jayant has worked very closely on this budget again, like last year with the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, would call you tonight and ask for a rating on the budget, what would your rating be? Your budgets have been rated over the years by the media, but what would be your rating for this budget?
That is media's job. I have never rated even the UPA budgets. So I will not be able to give marks, but I leave it to you to do that.
All right, but I'm guessing Jayant is going to get a pat on the back from you then, given the way you've analyzed this budget. Thank you so much, Mr. Sinha. Always a pleasure chatting with you right here on ET Now. Thanks for joining in with that perspective. That's former Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha, one of the main architects of the reforms that we saw in the first phase of the NDA government, joining in live and exclusive right here on ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.